My name is Danny Radosh, and I'm the President of Student Government and the Student Representative to the Wilson School Board. I want to thank you all for being here, as well as those who are tuning in live at home. So Wilson High School Student Government felt it was important to host this event due to the large number of candidates who are running for 5 seats at the school board, and the questions that the candidates will be asked were created and discussed by student government members. We hope this forum allows our community to become more educated on the platforms of each of the candidates, and I want to thank Judith Cranis and the League of Women Voters for co-hosting this event and moderating the questions. At the end of the event, there will be an opportunity for a meet and greet to meet the candidates individually. And please remember to vote in the primary elections on Tuesday, May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you to the student government, which has done a superb job organizing this forum, including writing all the questions we're going to be asking tonight. And I'd like to also thank the Wilson staff, because they have enabled our students to do this, and that is a really good thing. So the primary election is May 16th. Registered Democrats and Republicans will choose their candidates to be on the fall general election ballot. In the case of school boards, candidates can cross-file, meaning they may be on both parties' tickets, and all the candidates we're talking to tonight are. Before I introduce the candidates, let me tell you a bit about the job they are applying for. There are 9 school directors who govern the Wilson District. They set policy, they establish the curricula, that is what is taught, they adopt the budget, and that determines the tax rate necessary to support the budget. They select the superintendent, and they approve staff appointments. Now, tonight each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening question. Let me go back to say school directors serve part-time and they are not paid, so they're applying for a job they're not going to be paid for. The term is 4 years. And 5 of the 9 seats are up for election this year, and there are 11 candidates on the ballot. You'll be voting for 5 of the 11. And the candidates are, and this is the order they're seated from my right, Jennifer Denny, Craig Stoneha, Bernard McCree, Amy Murray, Bob Schneider, Keegan Orzechowski, Cindy Rusnak, Guadalupe Casper, Valerie Depp, Mike Martin, and Brad E. Hart. Now, each one will have 1 minute for the opening question and then 2 minutes to answer each other question. And we're going to start in order on my right, and then we're going to switch and start at the other end, and then we will start in different places along the line, and again we'll reverse directions so that nobody's always going first, nobody's always going last. So Mrs. Denny, I should call last names, we're in a school meeting here, please. Please explain why are you running for a seat on the Wilson School Board and what qualifications you have for this position.
Thank you. Before we start my time, could I ask everyone to give a round of applause to Ms. Radosh and the students who planned this all on their own. It's very impressive. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Denny, and I am running for school board because I have the education, skills, and background to make a positive impact on the district today while working and visioning for the Wilson of tomorrow. As an alum, I know how Wilson education can prepare you for the future. It enabled me to earn 2 advanced degrees, 1 in law and 1 in social work, and to have a successful legal career. I would bring those legal, social service, and administrative skills to my position on the board. As a parent of 2 bulldogs, I see the opportunities Wilson provides for students, academically, socially, and through extracurriculars. I also have witnessed firsthand what remarkable teachers we have and the impact they make daily. I want to support our teachers, empower our students, and build on our strong educational foundation, which is why I believe I received the PSEA endorsement. As the daughter of a semi-retired Wilson taxpayer, I understand the importance of being fiscally responsible and considering all stakeholders and decisions. Our funding system is facing significant changes over the next 4 years, and Wilson will need someone like me working to advocate in Harrisburg. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Stonaha. I am running for Wilson School Board. Well, first, I'm a local business owner in Spring Township, and I employ dozens of people in the area, and I'm running to continue to give back to the district I love. Just to give you some of my background and what it is that I do in affiliation with Wilson and education in general, I've been an active PTO member at both Shiloh and Cornwall. I've been a sponsor of the Wilson Education Foundation for years, including helping out with the Iron Chef competition just a few weeks ago. I am in a Wilson Senior High internship site. I run one of those, and I also hire Wilson Senior High graduates on a regular basis. And I'm a science explorer teacher at Wilson, where my name is Cosmic Craig, so don't steal it, that one's mine. Outside of Wilson, I'm a CYO volunteer, so I help with youth sports. I am a curriculum advisor for multiple colleges. I'm a Pennsylvania State STEM judge. I've been doing that for over 10 years, and I've seen the Wilson team there many times. They always show well. I am also a U.S. Navy STEM judge, so Wilson was not there this year, hopefully next year. And I got the time mark, so I just want to keep giving back. Thank you.
Mr. McCree.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here at this forum. I'm so elated to be a part of it. I'm Bernard McCree. I am a administrator at Kutztown University, where I've been for 15 years, and I've been in higher education for over 30 years, so I have a large background in education. I mentor hundreds of students each year on my campus and throughout the community. I'm the grandfather of 11, 8 of which are Bulldogs, and we have more on the way. From pre-K until 11th grade, my grandson is here tonight. So I'm excited to do this because I feel it is my public responsibility to give back to public education. I am a strong advocate for public education, which is why I work for Kutztown, because I believe that education provides a wide open forum for so many of our young people. And today we really want to ensure that our young people make the mark as they are coming through our school district.
Mrs. Murray.
Hi, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank the students and the administration and the teachers for getting this together. I really appreciate it. I think it's fantastic. I love that you're so interested in your future in this process, so thank you. My journey in this has been interesting, as most of you would probably agree. What I can say is they tell me this is a thankless job, so I'm going to start by thanking all current and past board members. Thank you for your service. Why am I running? I've raised 3 children in this district. 1 is graduating this year. I've lived in this community for 32 years. I may not have the resume that some of the others have, but I'm passionate about the success of this school, the success of our students, and the success of our community. I believe the community deserves a board that's going to engage with the community. I have 25 years in the financial industry with a large portion in compliance. Sorry. I was told to stop, so I did.
Thank you. Mr. Orzechowski. Oh, excuse me, I'm out of order. Mr. Schneider. If I make the first mistake, nothing you do will be wrong. That's always the plan.
Thank you. So why I'm running, it's actually simple, really. I have children at each level of the Wilson education system. I'm running to ensure my children continue to have access to the best education available. I believe people's personal political agendas, funded by outside money and pushing a political narrative, have no place in Wilson. Why I'm qualified? Well, first and foremost, I am a teacher myself. That gives me an insight into the inner workings of how schools operate, including things like school law and funding needs. Secondly, as a school board member and its vice president, as well as serving on other boards, I understand how board oversights work. I have a fantastic working relationship with the administration. And lastly, as a Wilson grad and volunteer, I am intimately familiar with the community's needs, which is why I believe I got the endorsement of the teachers.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Orzechowski.
All right, thank you. My name is Keegan Orzechowski. I graduated from Wilson. I have a degree in biotechnology from Penn State. I am a career R&D scientist, and I believe it's that background that allows me to understand how to generate data, how to analyze data, how to use critical thinking to objectively make correct decisions. I think it's important to highlight it's not just what we achieve, it's how we achieve, and that how is very important. To that end, I believe the school board directors should conduct themselves with integrity and respect when engaging with the community. We all have common goals. We all want to see our children succeed. We all want to see the students be successful. And I think we do that by getting the feedback from all the stakeholders, whether that's the students, the parents, the teachers, the administration, the community. And by doing that, we can make the best decisions that really find the balance for the Wilson community.
Thank you. Mrs. Resnick.
Of course, I'd be the one to forget that. I have a big mouth, though. I probably would have gone out. Hello, and thank you for this event. My name is Cindy Rusnak. I'm a grandparent of Wilson students, and I'm a taxpayer in the district. I have extensive experience in a multitude of leadership and service positions. I think that all of that experience can help to bridge what I see to be sometimes a very divisive, antagonistic environment in the boardroom, in board meetings. I understand the importance of encouraging and obtaining information, opinions, and data from everyone in order to discuss and determine the best possible decision for the district. I value input from all, work steadfastly to promote a sense of ownership by all members of any organization. I have experience in running a business, supervising employees, working with people from all walks of life. I have and continue to teach in a classroom, and I understand the challenges that educators face in supporting all students on their path to academic and personal success and preparedness for the future. I understand the developmental needs of children. I'm a quick and willing learner. I have a solid work ethic. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done, and I can laugh at myself knowing that I make mistakes like the rest of us.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I am running because I am a parent of 2 Wilson students and want to ensure that they receive the quality public education that I know Wilson is capable of delivering. As a current school board member throughout the past 4 years, I have gained emotional and practical skills and believe my perspectives and contributions are still much needed. I am trained in cultural and linguistic anthropology and have been researching and teaching in the humanities and the social sciences for over 20 years in higher education. Additionally, Wilson's rapid shifting demographics reveals that our Latino population has shown the most consistent and highest growth in the past almost 2 decades. Included among our Latino community is a consistent growth in our English learner population. As a lifelong Berks County resident and a second-generation Latina, I am uniquely suited to be a strong representative for these emerging populations. Y para mi comunidad latina, estoy aquí como voz para nuestros estudiantes y sus familias en el Distrito Escolar de Wilson. Gracias.
Thank you. Ms. Delp.
Hello, my name is Val Delp. I am the mother of 2 young children, ages 3 and 4, both of which who will be enrolled in the Wilson School District in the next 2 years. I've decided to get involved at this level before they're even in public education because I wanted to play a bigger role or a bigger part in ensuring that they have the best quality education here at Wilson. As far as my qualifications, I'm both a former educator who taught at the elementary as well as early childhood education levels. And for the last 12 years, I have been educating adults on insurance and investments in my role as a financial advisor. I think having those 2 experiences gives me a perspective where I can work towards helping the school district balance both providing the best quality educational experience for our children and supporting our teachers in that effort, as well as my responsibility to the taxpayers and ensuring that we're spending our taxpayers' money wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Good evening. My name's Mike Martin. I've been on the school board for 24 years. We have 2 children. My wife and I had 2 children that graduated from Wilson, and they went to Penn State. Both of those and one graduated and got their master's at a different area. My qualifications vary. I've had various jobs. I worked overseas, was a controller overseas, senior accountant, auditor. I testified before a Congress subcommittee several years ago, and I believe that the experience of the worldwide experiences I've had can make me a better person when I try to deliver information regarding education in the United States. As most people know, we're kind of falling behind the rest of the world, and there's reasons for that. We're not going to get into tonight. But I do want you to know that I'm a retired CPA. I retired officially at the end of March, so I'm no longer active, but I am a retired CPA, an auditor, real estate director, and I believe I believe a lot. I can bring a lot to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart.
Good evening. I will not be able to see the red card, so Mr. Martin, would you please elbow me? Appreciate that. My name is Brad Hart. I am running for re-election for the school board for Wilson School Director. I'm a proud father of 5 children, 4 of which have graduated through Wilson, and one that is still a special needs child in elementary school. I'm wanting to run because I want to be a continued part of the excellence of the school district. This is a destination school district where people love to live, students love to learn, and teachers like to work, love to work. My education is bachelor's in elementary science, elementary school education, 2 years. I taught in Long Beach, California, and then Muhlenberg School District. I earned my master's degree in educational leadership and principal certification and letter of eligibility for superintendent through Lehigh University. And I've been in education for about 26 years through my experiences as a principal, teacher, board member for the past 8 years, father, spouse, and board member. So I ask for your vote, and I thank you for being here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to read the next question, but this time we'll be starting this with Mr. Hart and going back the other direction.
Mr. Hart, would you like us to, do you want me to say 1 minute left? Since this is 2 minutes, yeah, perfect.
So the next question we have is, what is your plan on expanding diverse opportunities to create a more equitable learning environment?
Thank you. I believe diversity is around us no matter where we are in life or where we are in school. Diversity is what qualifies us to live life and to learn from each other and not to judge one another, but to be together. We need to provide opportunities within school for students and teachers and community members to understand the differences. Diversity isn't just race, color, creed, religion, or identity. It involves languages, disabilities, and other areas that cause us to be diverse. And we need to be more aware of that. So when we are out in the community, give the respect to each other, because everyone is different, one size, shape, or form, and it's very important that we continue to identify and celebrate each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
As Mrs. Casper stated earlier, that we're looking at changing demographics within Wilson School District. And with that changing, it comes different challenges. And challenges by themselves are interesting from the standpoint that every family has their own challenges to begin with. So coming to school in an area that maybe you don't know the language very well is very challenging. And I think we need to do a better job, with learning English as a second language. Excuse me, as a second language. I think that's really a key to make sure that everybody gets a sound education within Wilson. And I also believe that, there's demographics that show that we have an increasing rate in poverty. And poverty by itself sometimes gets confused with lower results. And I think we've kind of tainted our image at times with that. I know a lot of low-income families that their children are great, and it comes with a misconception. And these misconceptions are inappropriate and inappropriate in school. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think one thing that Wilson does extremely well is providing a lot of different opportunities as far as different tracks that you can take, especially at the high school level. So in that regard, the diversity of opportunity is, students can go more the academic route. Students can choose to do more of like the internship or working in partnership with going to school. Students can decide to do more of the trades and partner with the Berks Technology Center. So I think we have a lot of different opportunities to provide to students that have all sorts of different interests. I think another point to make about diversity is, a lot of time there's been comment about, bringing more diverse teachers to the school district. And I think that's a great idea, and I understand, students want to see themselves represented by the teachers who are teaching them. I think that sometimes that we also have to consider that that is just a piece of what we're looking for when we're hiring teachers. And we need to be first focusing on the quality of the teachers that we're hiring, and then if we're also able to bring more diverse population here, that is also a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Casper.
Yes. I would like to first say that I believe diversity is simply looking at the various populations that make up our school district. I would like to influence a little bit more inclusion in our and equity in our school district in terms of making sure that we are approaching the diverse population in our school district from an asset-based approach, where we look at the contributions that the diverse populations have in our communities and in our schools. And I think that also includes equipping our teachers with the proper tools and the resources that they need to be able to pull out those assets and utilize them in their instruction, particularly with language, which is one of my areas of expertise. This asset-based approach doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, we want them to learn English, which is the language of power, but we also want to think about how to utilize their language and not allow for them to lose their language either. So I think that's a really important part of being diverse and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Resnick.
Okay, I think diversity and inclusion, as several of the candidates said, goes beyond ethnicity, it goes beyond culture, language. I like to look at everybody as a unique individual. So if someone is getting their needs met, that is a great thing. But there are many of us, for many reasons, not getting our needs met. So I think a more individualized plan, a plan to meet a person where they're at, and that may include language materials, it may include a diversity of books and things for people that are not represented in the community. Going along with teachers, it may include having more teachers from more ethnic backgrounds, more religious backgrounds, more language backgrounds available to the students that are in our programs. So I think we have to go around and assess exactly where we need it, how to put those things in place for the individuals that we serve, and that could be a variety of things. Going back to assets, it could be materials, it could be training, it could be teachers. The thing that I have a problem with is having something portrayed which causes division elsewhere. So I think we have to look at every student as an individual and step in where their needs are and provide those needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Orzechowski.
Yes, some great points being made. I think how we start this discussion is we have to identify some of the gaps. If we're saying there may be some potential gaps in diversity and inclusion and equity, we can do that by surveying the populations, right? Survey your students, survey your families, see where maybe some of these gaps exist, and you do that by getting out and talking to the people. Get the feedback. I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel on this. I think all students should have access to equal opportunities to achieve their full potential. There's value in a diverse staff. As Mrs. Casper mentioned, language. I think having, a multilingual staff, there's value in that. That's something we can start at the school. Having students upskill and learn skills, learn languages, and having students the access to all the opportunities so they can truly achieve their potentials, and become part of that diverse candidate pool to be hired back at Wilson or another school someday.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider?
So many of the candidates have mentioned the diversity, the changes, the things like that that are happening. So I'm going to actually kind of go at this from a different angle. I would argue that Wilson already offers a lot of diversity and opportunity for our students, whether that's dual enrollment, whether it's internships, whether it's the BCTC. We have so many things that we already offer our students. The equity piece comes in how do we get it so that it's available for all of our students, so that all of our students can achieve at the highest end. To that end, I was recently asked to be part of an ad hoc committee to better help our English language learners at Wilson Southern. It's an opportunity that I really look forward to because I want them to have that kind of equitable experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray.
So diversity and equity is one of those hot topics, right? I think it's simple. It's respect. Respect for everyone, equally. I think there's too many assumptions going on. We assume that a kid living in a certain area of a certain race is fine. They have every opportunity that they could imagine. It's not true. Not every kid is just fine because of the color of their skin or where they live. I think taking away divisive language, talking, communicating, being open, having real dialogue is the best answer for all of this. Let's talk about respectful treatment of each other. Let's talk about respectful treatment of our teachers, respectful treatment of staff members, lunch personnel. I think one of the biggest problems is assumptions, assuming that someone from a particular area isn't capable. And making those assumptions is wrong. I think that we have to work together as a community to stop all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCree.
I would agree with my colleague here because there are a lot of assumptions that go on around diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, we as individuals and especially as a community, we have to come to be on one page about all of this. Everyone in this district deserves respect. And I'm not here just because of my 11 grandchildren, but I'm here for all of the children in this district. I don't care if they're purple, green, polka dot, that doesn't bother me. I want everybody to have equal access to equal opportunities and be included in this process that we call public education, and that they can have the best possible education that we can afford to give them in this community. Yes, we will always have the haves and the have-nots in every community in America, but it does not mean that the have-nots are not entitled to have what everybody else is entitled to. So yes, we do need to do a better job of creating diversity opportunities. We do need to do a better job of finding teachers and administrators that look like other children who are not white in our district, because that inspires kids when they see other people who look like them. I see it every day when people walk in my office and they're like, "You're the director of financial aid?" Yes, I control the money. $120 million. Yes. So that's encouraging for a kid from Philadelphia who comes to rural Kutztown to see that a black man is in charge of their financial aid. And I do everything possible to ensure that they will have success on my campus.
Thank you. Mr. Stoneha?
Man, you guys are making going number 10 tough. Over the years, diversity, the word diversity has changed a lot. I think we've seen it evolve as our need for that word has changed. And as this community grows and becomes more diverse, our challenges are going to grow with it. And we need to be sure to approach it from a position of equality of opportunity. I mean, we're all diverse. Every single person in this room is different on some level, and we all have different needs. And approaching it from a broad-based approach that every single kid gets a chance, every single student has an opportunity, all resources are available, and we're ensuring that they have the tools necessary for success, and we're giving them the opportunities to be successful at Wilson is ultimately the goal. A big part, I think, of making sure that happens is kind of closing the gap on different students from different parts of this community. And we have resources for that. We have local resources. Thank you. We have county resources, and partnering with them more closely and providing information to student families to help get them things that they need that may happen outside the district is a key part of making sure that everybody has access to resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Denny?
Thank you. One of my favorite sayings is that children learn what they live. And children in the Wilson District are learning lots of wonderful things. They have access and opportunities in a lot of different areas. But you don't have to be a statistician to look around and see that our teachers, our staff, our administration, and our school board do not reflect or mirror the population of our students, which is, last I saw, about 25 to 27% children of color. If you also look at other demographics such as poverty, LGBTQ, other criteria like that, it is not mirrored or reflected in the people who are in charge. And so, as Mr. McCree was saying, there are children that come in that don't have an example of people like them, whatever the them is. They don't have an example to look at in Wilson. One of the things Wilson can do is seek to hire teachers, staff, and for the people in the community to put people on the board that are more diverse. Not to choose somebody less qualified, but to choose amongst the equally qualified, those who bring diversity into the school. I also have to agree with Mrs. Murray's statement that it's important that we take away divisive language. At an interview we did for BCTV, one of the questions that was asked had to do with certain programs, such as equity, being considered woke. And my response to that was, what does woke mean? You know, it's a term that gets bandied around in a very derogatory fashion, but what does it mean? So I went and looked it up after that, because I wanted to know. And it's actually a term from African American vernacular, meaning to be alert to prejudice or discrimination. And that has been appropriated largely by white people to use as a negative comment about different programs. I think it's important to know that your school board members are going to support all people. There's an individual running for the school board who has a company called No Woke Telecom, who chose to cause a business, in essence, not alert to prejudice or discrimination. I would encourage you to not support individuals who are going to bring that kind of derisive language to our school board.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
We didn't plan that in the program. I'll turn to
I
our
would-
student
I would
government
say-
to find out. Please, wait a minute. No, maybe you can fit it into.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Let me give the next question, and then we're going to start this with Mrs. Murray and go to our right, if that's okay, just to break things up. What is your plan for improving student safety within the school grounds?
Thank you. So, we recently had a live test of safety here at Wilson, and I think the students, the teachers, the administration, and the police had an amazing response. Continuing to look for weaknesses in that plan and continuing to improve upon that plan. I think safety, there's inside threats and outside threats. I think one of the biggest things we can work on at Wilson to improve safety is work within our discipline policy, making sure that students feel safe in the school. I spoke to a ninth grade student recently who said she does not feel safe in her school. She does not feel safe in the bathrooms. There's too much drug activity going on. Not enough respect for staff and teachers. So I think that's where I would really focus on, is trying to help find a way to teach children to be respectful and accountable for their actions, and continue to help them learn how to be great people. And I think that will make our schools much safer.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider?
Thank you for bringing up the recent incident that we had here. I would first like to thank all the first responders that came out, because the response was unbelievably amazing. So thank you. What that did for us, though, was, like Ms. Murray said, gave us a live test of the system. So we saw what worked and what didn't work. And that very afternoon, I came here to meet with both district administration and high school administration to try and find out what I could do to try and help. And there isn't much that I can do, because they're doing it. They're working with the local police departments. They found where the flaws were. They're fixing those. In terms of student discipline, I feel like that can create a feeling of a lack of safety, but I feel like a lot of that is coming from outside the district, a lot of those issues. And there's not a whole lot that we on the board can do. In terms of what is happening here, the administration of the buildings of the district is constantly tweaking the discipline plans to try and improve things. They're always working to try and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Osikowski?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Again, thanks to all the first responders. I think, I was waiting for my son that day. It was a very scary experience for everyone, but I think, Wilson came through with flying colors. I did want to highlight that again, that Wilson is doing a great job in this area. A big thank you to Dr. Trickett for the work he's made in this area as well. I strongly support the idea of resource officers in schools. If you do some of the research on this, that is one of the most highly effective ways to both be a deterrent and a first responder if there's any incidents. But just because we're doing a great job, it doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. And when speaking with Officer Johnson and Dr. Trickett, I mean, that's one of the first things they'll say is, yes, we did great, but there's room for improvement. To highlight that concept of continuous improvement, I think we can spread that beyond the issue of safety, always looking at, even when things are going well, what can we do to make them better? Wilson, as has been mentioned, is a premier school district in the region. We all want to keep it that way. On the other side of it, safety within the schools, I know there's, some issues with discipline and bullying and harassment and all that. And I think we have to consider both the safety of teachers and the students and the staff of all the parties. I think one of the ways we do that is we build a culture of respect. We have to kind of pivot, and it's difficult to make a cultural change like that, to have everyone have mutual respect across students to students, students to teachers, students to their facilities they use. And it can be tough to get that inertia rolling on a concept like that. But it's something I think if we all try to foster, I think that'll have far-reaching impact to both safety and other issues like discipline as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Resnick?
I, too, want to compliment the Wilson District on the way they responded to that incident. And yes, I think we're doing a lot of things right, but the fact that a student is saying they don't feel safe in the bathroom, that's a problem. That's not an outside problem. That's an internal problem. I think that The situation that Dr. Trickett followed through on, where he had the students show up and pick up litter from the grounds, these are all tiny little steps to promote ownership, camaraderie, cooperation, collaboration. I think the key to respect is getting everybody on board, that we are responsible for each other. And going back even to the equity and diversity, that we are individuals, but we take care of each other. So I think that safety also has to be an internal, constantly looking at our discipline policies, constantly like getting information from students and teachers. What is it that frightens them in the school? Why don't they feel safe? Why don't they feel like they can go to the bathroom safely? You need that information to be able to, look at it, come up with some solutions, and include everybody in that process. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Casper.
Yes, thank you. I believe we need to continue to keep our physical buildings safe, as many have mentioned. And statistically, schools are actually one of the safest places for our young people. Wilson has also invested quite a bit of time and resources as a district in nurturing our positive relations with our local law enforcement. And to that end, our current protocols for safety have been proven recently to work well in our times of crisis. I also believe that safety is inclusive of providing a welcoming and nurturing environment for all students to feel a sense of belonging. I believe Wilson is accomplishing this by including social and emotional learning in our curriculum, as well as providing the wide array of opportunities for our students to get involved in their schools with activities such as music and the arts, athletics, social clubs, internships, and so much more. But I think we certainly are a work in progress. I do believe we need to consider more restorative approaches and less punitive and harsh consequences for behaviors, which can often have the effect of shaming and stigmatizing students who have caused harm. Restorative processes offer an opportunity for students to understand the source of their behavior, take responsibility for their choices, and to learn and grow from their experience with the goal of repairing harm and conflict. This approach focuses on facilitating learning communities that nurture the capacity of students to engage with one another and their environment while supporting the inherent dignity and worth of all. I hope to influence the district in finding a balance between maintaining that physical safety in our buildings and in creating a nurturing and inclusive school and community climate where everyone feels like they belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Delp.
Thank you. School safety is something that is very important to me. I think we need to always be continually reevaluating how we're protecting our students from both external threats as well as internal disruptions. I know that school safety has been something that's been very important to Dr. Trickett, and he's made a lot of strides in that area, and I would absolutely support, his continued effort in those areas. Again, just going off of what some other candidates had said, with the recent events, we had that opportunity to really reevaluate our safety protocols and take a closer look at where, we may be able to improve. And I was really glad to hear that was taken seriously and it was utilized as an opportunity to improve. The other side of safety is discipline. I think there needs to be a balance of both improving, the discipline that is going to minimize disruptions in the classroom with also rewarding when we're seeing students do good in the school. It's not all negative. We also have to have a lot of positive reinforcement as well. I'd like to see, how is the discipline policy being enforced across the district? Is it consistent? Are there ways that we can maybe learn from one another from school to school? Is there something that's working really well in one school that we can maybe copy into another school and utilize? And Keegan, you kind of stole my phrase. I was going to talk about creating a culture of mutual respect between students and teachers, and teachers to teachers, students to students. I think if we really set that expectation, that will go a long way to really improving the discipline issues within the school. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Helps if I do that. Every student deserves a safe and comfortable environment to learn in. Even today's environment with declining security and incidents at schools, overall, Wilson has done a pretty outstanding job, and everybody else mentioned previous to me about the great job Spring Township Police did, as well as the other jurisdictions that sent police to help the situation. The administration did an outstanding job in keeping the community informed, as well as having a plan that worked, reasonably well. I've been given an A for that. Teachers, administrators, and support staff are on the front line when it comes to protecting the lives of students as well as themselves. Safety is not stagnant. We need to continually evolve safety measures by enhancing them from everyday knowledge as well as new items as they occur. The one thing that I would consider is some enhances could be having an in-day service segment on learning the early warning signs of potential disgruntled students or parents or even teachers. We have an opportunity to utilize resources that use guidance counselors, social instructors, and mental health professionals to help monitor at-risk students with past discipline issues. I believe this would help overall bring discipline back to the school as well as respect in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Thank you. I think Wilson does an outstanding job with their safety and security plan. It's not a plan they put on the shelf and look at once a year. It's something they continually review and improve upon. Schools have different scenarios throughout the school year where they practice. Sometimes a little concerning to some students the younger they are, but it's meant to address specific instances that happened the other week at Wilson. The other side of it is discipline. Discipline is not a one-size-fit-all type of plan. You have to take into account the varying needs of the students. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area in the middle. And what I mean by that is you need to understand where students are. Students come in every day with a different suitcase full of problems and opportunities. And we don't know what happened that day when they came into school. It could have been a rough situation at home. It could have been a rough situation on the way to school. But when those students come in every day, we need to welcome them, make them feel safe and secure. There are behaviors, and there's a process to address those behaviors too. When a parent or student has a problem, the school board is not the first step to take in that address. It needs to work through the process. If the student has a problem, talk with the teacher. If the parent doesn't get satisfaction from that, talk to the administrator, and then the superintendent, work their way up to assistant superintendent, then to the school board. There's a process in place because it works, and we need to address the students at their individual levels, whether it's first grade or 12th grade. Every student is different, and every student has a right to believe that they will be safe. Teachers need to feel safe, as well as administrators. So we need to work every day to continue to improve what we're doing, not just in the physical plan, but as well as the emotional side of behavior too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Denny?
Thank you. It's interesting you asked this question because I actually just spoke on this at the school board meeting on Monday night, and all school board meetings are available on YouTube, so I would encourage anyone who's interested to go and look at that meeting. One of the things that I talked to about that was what a great job the school did, as everybody has talked about with the swatting incident, and how it was an opportunity, as horrible as it was, to test out the procedures and find that we have a really strong safety and security plan here at Wilson. There seems to be a push to reinvent the wheel. The wheel already exists, and it works. And one of the things that Dr. Trickett has done with his administration over the past year is to set out goals to improve on it. Because as was mentioned, it's not something that should sit on a shelf. It constantly needs to change and evolve. And as part of that, there was a district-wide culture survey that was conducted, which I thought was interesting. And those results haven't been published officially yet. My understanding is Dr. Hoffert is working on that, but he did present it at the Equity Council meeting. And what he found, what he and the administration found as three of the main points, is that there is a struggle, there is some question in the ability for the kids in school to regulate emotion. there's problems with conflict resolution, and there's a disconnect between teacher and student perception on how to find support. And I think that's really great information that can be used, because if you look at the school, most of the incidents that occur at Wilson, which statistically are pretty equivalent with our neighboring schools, have to do with kids who are making poor choices. The prefrontal cortex is where decision-making comes from, and it's not fully developed in anybody until about the age of 25, and men develop it later than women. And so if we can look at the areas where our students are struggling and look at this as yet another opportunity to teach and to educate, because that's what schools are for, and help our students learn techniques for dealing with conflicts and how to regulate their emotion, I think we'll see less incidents in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stoneha.
Thank you, Judith. I'm going to say it, I know everybody else said it, but we are extraordinarily lucky to have Superintendent Trickett and Officer Johnson and his entire team at the Spring Township Police. And I think that was evidenced during the swatting event and how effective they were in their planning, their execution, and everything else. There's two types of safety at a school, essentially. There's internal and there's external threats. I think we focus a lot because it makes the big news on the external threats, but the internal threats are the day-to-day. I mean, that's the bullying, that's the fighting, that's the things that make kids feel uncomfortable going to school and affect their ability to learn effectively in a classroom setting. My wife and I actually personally got involved in this more from a parental standpoint, trying to understand everything that goes into the safety and security of a district the size of Wilson by helping put together a parent safety plan that included links to grants and ways to come up with money for increasing security and coming up with resources without costing taxpayer dollars. We even created a Wilson Safety podcast series where we interviewed psychiatrists, psychotherapists, social workers. Officer Johnson was on it twice, where they walk through what parents can expect, what is the best way for them to engage with the school and with the police in the event of a situation, and really what to do. I mean, as Keegan said earlier, it's a very emotional time when you find out there's an event happening at the school. And we need to also make sure we're giving guidance to parents and community members, not just students and staff, when it comes to how to react to this. Not only to make sure that they maintain their sanity, but also to make sure that they don't get in the way of the first responders and the people that are doing their jobs. So I think safety is extremely important. I think we do a phenomenal job of it, but again, echoing things that have been said, it's an ongoing process. We can always improve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCree.
Kudos again to all of the folk who participated in that terrible incident that we had to experience. Fine job done by everybody. I do believe that school safety is extremely important. We are dealing today, especially on the heels of COVID, with extreme mental distress. Mental health is creating lots of issues for all of us, all of our families. And there are lots of things that are going on that help to exacerbate those situations with many households, because what goes on in your household may not go on in somebody else's household. You know, I live with 6 grandsons, and I tell you, there are days I want to hide my head under the rock because they're loud. But school safety is so important. So we want to make sure that, and especially in terms of discipline, that's why I mentioned the mental health, because there are a lot of problems that are going on. And we have to have the resources available. I know even at Kutztown, we're looking at bringing more social workers into our community to assist our students. And our school district will probably have to do the same thing so that we can meet folk at their needs, help them to understand what they need to do in order to be good parents to help their child, and also help the child to understand what this is we talk about, mutual respect. Because we talk a lot of things, but we have to understand that our children may or may not understand those things that we're talking about, because they're in a different world. You know, we're talking Gen Z students right now. They don't interact like us. I'm a baby boomer, so they don't interact like us. So we have to meet them where they are.
Thank you. And let me ask Ms. Rodish, do we have time for one question before the close if we were to shorten it to 1 minute? Thank you. Then I will start with Mrs. Casper, and we'll go to our left after that. What do you think you could do to expand our special education programs and start them at lower levels of education?
Thank you. What a great question. I think our district is doing some work around working to evaluate students earlier and get them in the right course. And I think one of the things that we're doing in terms of assessment as well is that we're looking at more various forms of information about students. So we're not putting so much weight on standardized types of assessment to understand where students are. And we're looking at evaluating them in a variety of different ways so that we have a more holistic picture of where our students are, and we are able then to draw on the resources that we need to support our students. So I would definitely continue to support our district in exploring the different resources to expand on what we currently have to support our special education students. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Resnick.
I think over the years, there has been a huge increase in the need by students and their families for more specialized education. I think back, I'm an old lady, where we were and where we are now. It's very different. That being said, the fact that the numbers of them are growing, that there are more people that need services, we have to look at a couple of things. Assessing has to go across the board. I think there has to be a change in how doctors assess children and what their developmental where their developmental gaps are. I think parents need to be educated more about those things because we've all been first parents. We've all been parents where we think, well, is this normal? Is this not normal? We don't know. So I think there has to be more education there, collaborative education and just individualized education. I think teachers also are vital in providing information, and I think respecting that a teacher who has been in the field for a long period of time can assess skills and say, okay, there may be some gaps here that need to be filled. And then I think we need to go in at a younger age and provide those things.
Thank you. Mr. Ozakowski.
So my sister's actually was a special education teacher at Wilson, and now she works kind of as a consultant. So anytime I have a question about this, I usually call her up or text her and bother her, and she drops all the knowledge on me about the process. I think this also highlights an important point that school directors don't always have all the answers, and we need to rely on the administration and teachers to get feedback about issues like this. When we're data poor, when we don't have all the knowledge, that's where we need to rely on our subject matter experts, in this case, teachers or the special education professionals. But you bring up a good point about the younger age. In the post-COVID world, we're all aware there's this developmental gap. I hear it at the parent-teacher conferences, especially in the elementary school, that students are 1 year behind, 2 years behind. So I think in this modern time, we have to think about how we address that at the younger age.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. One of the things I would say is we have it, special ed programs go all the way down to kindergarten. It's when children are first assessed, and they can be assessed at any time along their educational journey. I would say the biggest problem we have for meeting their needs is external as well. There is a tremendous shortage of teachers. There's a tremendous shortage of paraprofessionals who are really the ones on a day-to-day basis that meet the needs of these kids. Now, I will compliment our administration on doing a fantastic job of trying to get more and more of those people in the building to meet those needs. But as was also stated, some of this does come from outside as well. Making sure parents are educated, making sure the community understands what the needs are so that we can meet the needs of all students. This also goes back to the equity discussion of trying to reach all our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Murray.
Thank you. One of my children is dyslexic, so this is a topic that's I feel strongly about. Identifying kids who are struggling early is so important. My daughter was not identified early enough, and it had lasting consequences for her. But we worked through it. So the other thing is that I want to kind of continue on what Keegan was talking about is looking at the elementary levels, and with COVID, these kids are behind. So let's change the way we're doing something to try and catch them up. Let's look at individualizing their curriculum. Not all kids are capable of reading at the same level, and maybe we need to teach to their level, not to the curriculum.
Thank you. Mr. McCree.
A few years ago, I was at, I think it was the elementary school at Cornwall Terrace where my grandchildren are, and I watched in amazement and slight laughter as I watched a young man who was just doing his own thing. He's a kid who was on the autism spectrum, and I was so amazed that he still sang. He had fun. He didn't rock the same way the other kids did. He didn't clap the same way that the other kids did, but he had fun. And it was amazing to see how those music teachers had engaged with him and allowed him to dance and rock to his own beat. And that's what we have to do when we're looking at providing resources for children who have different learning situations, is one, we've got to make sure we can provide the resources. And Mr. Snyder said that, we're looking for paraprofessionals, we're looking for teachers to meet that need.
Thank you. Mr. Stonehouse.
Well, it's oddly similar, but my sister-in-law is actually a special education teacher, formerly a social worker, and now works exclusively with students with Down syndrome and Asperger's. And she has regularly given me updates on how they handle early education on figuring out where the challenges lie with individual students, and it's exceptionally difficult. And part of the reason is just different children develop at different speeds. So, sometimes it's hard to identify exactly what's going on until they're a little bit older. But I do find that one of the things I hear consistently is making sure that we group students together at young ages by ability level seems to help them tremendously to kind of isolate where they're strong, where they could use some help, and give them a little bit of confidence too, to work on things that maybe they wouldn't feel so comfortable admitting to in a group, in a larger group. So small group seems to work. Communication is also huge. Talking to parents, educating parents, making sure they understand what it means if their child's having issues is wildly important. So thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Mrs. Denny.
This is a hard question to answer in a minute, but I want to start by saying I think Wilson has really progressed in this area. When I was a student here, all of the special education students were in Mr. Riffle's room down around the corner where you never saw them, and it was a room that was kind of looked at by the children who were not in the special education program as kind of, they were looked at in a negative way. Today, Wilson mainstreams most special education children from kindergarten as long and as far as they can be mainstreamed, which allows for interaction between the kids and less of an us versus them perspective, which I think is great. They also just spoke at the Monday night board meeting on the unified sports team, which is another way that Wilson is reaching out. But to address this is a really multifaceted answer. Teachers, Mr. Schneider, right on point. We're looking at a 66% decrease in Pennsylvania teachers in the last 10 years. So teachers are going to become a commodity. Teachers who have a background in special education, a much bigger commodity, and we're going to have to deal with that. There's also a big financial component. But I see I'm out of time because a minute was pretty short. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, let's go on then to Mr. Hart.
Thank you. As a person who has a son with a disability, a wife who was a special education teacher and a special education supervisor, and myself with a disability, I think the district does an outstanding job of identifying students when it is the appropriate time. It begins before kindergarten. It starts in preschool. And just because a student is behind does not mean they have a disability. It's important to work with the parents, the teachers, school counselors, the paras, and the special education teachers to see what is happening, where the child needs to be developed in what areas, and to put a plan in place that all people can support. It cannot be done in isolation. It needs to be done as a team, at teaching students at their own individual level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Yes, thank you. Everything was said to date from the board members or potential board members is correct. And they mentioned identifying a child's issues at the earliest possible age is really a key, because if you catch it early, it pays itself off down the road. So that's really the first step, is really addressing it at the earliest possible time. And somebody mentioned about educating parents. Most parents, might see it as just part of their growing up experience, but I've went through this with one of my sons, and I can see some of the changes. And one of the things that people forget about is we do have limited resources, and I hate to throw finances ever into a conversation, but a good portion of our budget, and I believe we have one of the best special education programs in the county, but that's me speaking. We have limited resources, and we cannot distract from the whole for just, a certain amount of people. We got to be unified in our approach to making sure every child gets the same amount of attention across the board. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Delp.
Thank you. So in attending a lot of the Finance Committee meetings the last few weeks, one thing that has been brought up a few times is the growing population of special ed students in this district. And again, trying to staff that and be able to provide the teachers and the support staff that can handle that growth is going to be very challenging. With the teacher shortage that a few of my other fellow candidates have spoken about, it's going to be harder and harder to attract the level of teachers that we need to support that. And that's something I think we really need to focus on, is how can we attract the best quality teachers to this district to be able to support the growing population here. And I think we do that in a number of ways. I think some of it comes from improving the culture within the schools. Again, going back to the building the mutual respect between students and teachers, and I think some of it also comes to supporting our teachers better, and maybe that looking at individualized approach to teaching our students will help with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are ready for our last question. And if you need to put anything in it beyond the question, you can, but we're going to need to keep it exactly to 2 minutes each, or we won't be done on time. And we need time for meeting and greeting. So we're going to start in the middle with Mr. Oshikowski, and we're going to go to our right. And the question is, what will be your priorities as a Wilson School Board member?
That's a great question. Again, I'm going to highlight the data side of things. We live in the information age. Everything deals with data nowadays. We have the capability to send out surveys. It was brought up earlier, we had a survey sent out. It took months to kind of be processed. The results kind of trickled out. I think we can do a better job there. We can look at data in a timely way, and that's how it should be viewed. We can send out surveys once a quarter, once a year, and surveys of the students, get the data, understand where we're doing things well, where there's room for improvement. And kind of to highlight this point for all the students, those with the skills to deal with big data outside of school are going to succeed. If you look at how to deal with big data sets, how to analyze them, how to present them. I think that's a unique skill that we should be really pushing within the schools, find as many courses as we can to incorporate that, because outside of this arena, that's really getting pushed. When you can use big data and incorporate that into AI and machine learning, I mean, it's really finding its way into the private industry. So again, show me the data. Let's use data to our advantage. Let's use it to make good decisions.
Thank you. Mrs. Resnick.
As we've been going, door to door in the community and introducing ourselves, the one thing that I have taken from that is that no matter what door you go to, no matter what the people's political beliefs, their opinions, their values, they basically want the same thing. They want to be heard. I can't tell you how many times people just would go on and on about they don't feel heard. It's the diversity of us as human beings that makes our world what it is. Our individual characteristics, our strengths, our weaknesses, our challenges, they all come together. We help each other. We support you in your things that you do well. Like I think of the students, they had artists, they had leaders, they had dance organizers to make the Thon so successful, to come together and raise that much money. It takes all different types of people to do that. So I think one of the things that I could bring is we adults, we need to do the same. We truly need to listen to others, involve ourselves in making a conscious effort to do it without judgment, without divisive comments, without offhand comments, patronizing platitudes, like all kinds of things that I've been watching in some of these board meetings. And people want to hear the truth. Like, they know that everything is not perfect. So they want to hear what the problems are so that they can take ownership and come up with some ideas to solve them. And that means everybody. We have a huge percentage of 19 and over people in this community, 31,000 people in this community. They all don't have kids in the school district. Their voices need to be heard as taxpayers as well. So we need to be listening not only to teachers and administration, students, parents, and taxpayers.
Thank you. Mrs. Casper.
Yes, it's pretty obvious that education is hurting right now. I do believe that we need to increase the pressure on our lawmakers and our policy advocates to invest more resources in paying more competitive teacher salaries and to create a more supportive climate for all our educators to provide quality instruction. School boards also need to advocate for more inclusive academic, social, and supportive opportunities and policies that represent all students and their families. We also really need to work together to change this narrative regarding the education profession. And we need to create more meaningful choices in the area of education for our students. We need to provide role models for our students so that they desire to go into education and represent a more diverse population among our educators. We need to provide a more inclusive and supportive climate for all of our teachers and equip them with the right tools to be able to bring forth the diversity in our students. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Delp.
Thank you. My main priority, which I think should be the main priority for every school board member, is to refocus on the academic excellence of Wilson and ensuring that we are working towards improving proficiencies in math, English, and science. It's no surprise that with the pandemic and a lot of students not being in school full-time, that there's been some learning loss. And I think we need to work on getting kids caught back up to where they should be. So that would be my number one priority. I would love to spend a lot more time collaborating with teachers. Actually sitting down and talking to teachers, staff, administration, and really getting to know from their perspective, where Wilson does things very well as well as, where are some areas that we could improve upon, and what are some ideas and solutions we can come up with together. I also would like to see a much more open communication with the community. I believe in listening to everyone's concerns with respect, even though we may not ultimately agree, but, always being open to hearing different perspectives and trying to understand. I think that also another important one for me is fiscal responsibility. As a financial advisor, I hear often from clients of mine that, it's sometimes a burden, the school taxes, and I realize we can't do anything about getting rid of school taxes, but I would always strive to, look at everything from the perspective of the programs and the contracts and the vendors that we use. Are we getting the best quality for the cost? And if not, are there other options out there that we could be using that would still provide the same level of quality or better, but reduce the cost and reduce the need to increase the taxes on the taxpayers? So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Yes, thank you. Education spending is complicated and requires a delicate balance between spending and fiscal responsibility. We often sacrifice one for the other, and at times we impact low-income families as well as the seniors in our community. Financial resources are limited, and we must do a better job addressing the needs of individual programs within the school district. With that said, I think my main concern right now is with teacher burnout. It's real, it's happening every day, and we need to look at ways of relieving this pressure, because without relieving that pressure, the education's going to suffer. So to me, that's the most important thing that's on my agenda. We got to start being creative and trying to take some of the stress off the teachers through the IEPs, which in themselves are very time-consuming. And the lingering effects of COVID is also making teaching more difficult. So for me, we have to look at some programs to address that in the near future. And also discipline, a lot of people talked about it. Discipline is a key issue. And there's various things. The government made it very difficult for schools in 2015 to implement disciplinary procedures, and that was a dismal failure. That has been backed off now by the government. So I think we need to look at all those things, but once again, teacher burnout is most important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Thank you. Before I forget, Wilson Games will be celebrated and performed at Gursky Stadium for special needs children. They're also paired with middle school and high school students this Friday at 9:30, and there'll be food trucks if you're hungry. It's a great way to get out and support the students of the district. Speaking of, my priority has been and will continue to be about the students. We should be here for the students regardless of what we face as a board. Bottom line is, if you can go home at night and say, I did what I felt was best for the students of this district, if I do that, I know I can sleep at night. As a teacher, as a volunteer, as an administrator, and as a board member, that's what we need to continue to think of. We need to support our teachers and our support staff and administration. We need to work together collaboratively, and collaboratively means with the parents involved too. It can't be done in isolation at home, it cannot be done at school. So the main focus needs to be the students. We talk about spending. Yes, there are unfunded mandates, but we need to do what is appropriate for these students, whether it's special education or not. It is important to do what is right, and what is right is giving the students their ability levels and supporting all students. Just one final comment is my kids always told me when they were going for, off topic a little bit, when they were running for a position in an organization, they always said, hey, Dad, what's something we can think of that will remember us about? And they always said, think smart, vote hard. So I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking you to say, remember, think hard, think smart, vote Brad Hart, Wilson School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Denny?
Thank you. I would start by encouraging people to go to my website, Jennifer Denny, the number 4 Wilson, because I detail all of my priorities on there. I'm not a single issue candidate, and I have pretty in-depth responses to all of the major issues. The ones I'm going to concentrate on right now is one of the things that I think is really important is to trust and empower teachers for a lot of the reasons that were mentioned along with my fellow candidates is that there's a lot of burnout. Being a teacher right now is really hard. I've heard comments like, oh, Wilson teachers get paid really good. And yes, teachers do get paid well at Wilson, but if you compare a teacher to the professions that they are teaching, engineering, for instance, physicians, even certain blue-collar trades, what they make is less than what the people they are training make. And because of the shortage that we are going to be expecting in the near future, like I said, teachers are going to become a commodity. There's going to be a supply and demand. And so I think that one of the responsibilities of the school board is to support our teachers in every way we can, to trust them, to enable them to teach without being micromanaged. I think finances are a really big issue that need to be addressed in the sense that we talk a lot about taxpayers, but there's case law in Pennsylvania that in the next couple of years is going to change the way schools are supported. It's been found to be unconstitutional, and so we are most likely going to move from a property tax basis to some other form of tax. You're still going to pay taxes, it's just going to be different how you pay it. And the reason why this is important is it's going to be taken away from the local entity, from the school board, and taken to Harrisburg. And so you need people on the school board who understand finances, who understand the things that are pulling from our budget, like PACERS, like IEPs and special education lawsuits, and teacher salaries, and can advocate to make sure that Wilson can continue to provide the level of education that it has provided to date. I'm about to get the red card, so I'll stop here.
Thank you. Mr. Stonaha?
We have a mission at any public institution, any public educational institution, to provide education to our students to get them ready for the next phase of life. Whether that's college-bound, work-ready, trade-ready, whatever that is. And I feel like at times we've lost our focus a little bit on that, and we tend to head down rabbit holes. My primary focus would be to get us back on track and get back to basics. Let's start focusing on the things that matter. Academic excellence. I mean, Wilson is widely known as one of the best schools in the county, maybe even in the state, for their academics. And as we've heard multiple times, our response to COVID has definitely, as with all public schools, had an impact on our students' learning abilities. Getting back to basics and making sure that we focus on academic excellence is a huge part of what we need to start retraining our people to think about. Also, communication. We're out there, almost every day talking to people, and one of the main things we hear is people feel marginalized. They feel like nobody's paying attention to what they have to say, and if they do get heard, they're dismissed. This is not good. The community members, we have 5 pillars that hold this school up, and that's teachers, administrators, students, community members, and parents. We need to give them all voice, or else we're going to end up with problems. And the final thing, and I know it's been said, I'm going to say it again, fiscal responsibility. I know there are plans on the table right now for upwards to 30 to 40% tax increases over the next 5 years, aggregated. We need to make sure we're focusing on the effects that our decisions here have on every member of our community, whether it be retired people, whether it be, just single moms, whatever. We have a great impact, possibly the biggest impact locally of any group of people, and we need to be aware of that and be responsible with those finances. And it doesn't mean cutting programs or anything like that. It's as simple as looking for redundancies, cleaning up budgets. Thank you, Danny. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCree?
Thank you. Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. We don't want to have to build weak children in order for them to be weak men. We want to build strong children in this district. One of the main things that I'm concerned about is positive communication. And I think you said that, people sometimes being dismissed or not heard, I think I've made a friend in the last few weeks because I listened to her. I listened to what she had to say. I asked her what was her concern. And we have to be willing to listen to people and join them at the table, and so that we can communicate broadly and positively so that we can be on the same page for our children. Ms. Denny also talked about the funding structure here in Pennsylvania. That's going to change, and so we've got to be prepared for that. As a school board, We want to make sure that we are helping to make the right choices for this district and for the children in this district. And yes, it's going to affect taxpayers. I'm one, just like everybody else. And we want it to be a fair and equitable process. And the last thing, I am not here for divisive agendas or mistruths. I'm a truth teller. I'm going to tell you the truth. You may like it, you may not like it, but I can agree to disagree with you when I walk out of the room, because I don't carry judgments or animosity toward people. I like people. I love to engage with people. So I do ask that as you are considering voting for a candidate, please vote for me. I'm everybody's pop-pop, okay? All right?
Thank you. Mrs. Murray.
Thank you. So my biggest priority, if I were to become a board member, would be to really work on building the culture in the district that supports the teachers. I think that Wilson has a great culture to begin with. I think there's a lot of things that can be improved on, as with anything. I would love to see divisive behaviors removed from school boards, in the school classrooms. I think we're a community and we have to act like a community. One thing that I will say that I make a solid promise is I leave my ego at the door. I don't pretend to know it all, but I will find the answers. I have heard time and time again from community members that they are tired of all the back and forth and the hate. Politics don't belong here. And I stand strong in my belief that that is where we have to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
I didn't realize going last would be so stressful. So many people talked about so many things already, but it did give me some things to reflect on at least. But before I do that, I would like to start by thanking again Danny and the student government for putting this on. You are spectacular role models for the rest of the students. There was a lot thrown out here. A lot was talked about in terms of finance. Finance is something that's always looked at in the district by multiple stakeholders. We have an amazing finance and operations teams here that are constantly figuring out ways to save money. The administration in the buildings at the district level are always looking for ways to save money. To Mr. Martin's concern about teacher burnout, we are burned out. And some of that has come from what has transpired the last several years. Teaching doesn't look like it did 3 years ago. Being a student doesn't look like it did 3 years ago. And so we need to work together to help both students and teachers. There was questions about our academic excellence. And I think our academic excellence exists. Our teachers are doing a fantastic job. Our students are trying their butts off. They are working super hard. Yes, we may have hit some deficits because of COVID. So what's my goal if I get on the board? Stay the course. We're not perfect, but we're getting better every day. We find things to improve upon, and we work on them. Thank you. Please considering #VoteBob.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank all the candidates. I think you all did a very good job. And I would like to thank the Student Government Association because I heard so many compliments for the questions that the students brought up. I think they did a really good job, and I think we should give them a hand as well. Now, I did hear one comment that kind of bothered me, so I'm going to go to the case law that Mrs. Denny was mentioning. The court has ruled that the system the legislature is now doing to fund our schools is unconstitutional. But our legislators seem slow to want to act on this. So I think the thing we can do, and I'm not going to accept there's nothing that we can do. That's the piece that bothered me. We can do something. We need all of us to talk to our legislators to come up with a plan, whatever it is, just get them working on it. And I think that's something each of us, certainly on this side, we're aware of what the political process is. The students who have put on the thing know what it's about. We can all write those letters to say, we need an answer now. We need you to come up with a formula now, because otherwise our schools are always in limbo, not knowing what will be coming in and what has to be on our local property tax. So there is something we can do. Voters, I'd like you to remember that as you go to the election, you are also voting for the Pennsylvania Supreme, Superior, and Commonwealth judges. You're voting county commissioners and other county officials, and for our township and borough officials. And you can find information on these candidates on the League of Women Voters online voters guide. It's vote411.org. That's VOTE411.org. And the League, in partnership with Berks Community Television, has interviewed many of these candidates, and you will find these interviews, called Candidates Up Front, on the BCTV website and YouTube page. And the nonpartisan group One Voice, One Vote also interviewed the candidates for Wilson School Board, and thank you, everybody showed up, it was really good. You will find those interviews on the One Voice, One Vote Facebook page. So there are lots of places to get good nonpartisan information. And I do have one more thing, because a lot of people in this area are voting by mail. If you are voting by mail, and I'll ask the camera to, my little cheat sheet here, the top shows the official election security ballot, the official election ballot, that's your security envelope. You put it in that before you put it in the one with the green stripe, which is the main envelope to be mailed in. And it's important that you sign that form or sign the ballot the same way you're registered to vote. So on the back of that envelope, you'll have a sheet like this. Over here where I've blacked out my name is where your name will be exactly as you're registered. You're going to sign it at the X, and then you put the date on it right below. They've cleared, by ordering a new envelope from a new printer, they have cleared up the difficulty of finding where you signed your name. So please remember to do that if you're doing it mail-in. And if you plan on mailing the ballot back with the U.S. Post Office, please be sure to allow a week for it to get there. If you're using one of the drop boxes, you will find the hours there open on the Berks County Election Services website. Berks County Election Services, very easy. And if you have any questions about voting or anything else with the elections, I will stay to answer them. And I know the candidates are staying for a meet and greet. So on behalf of League of Women Voters of Berks County, I want to thank everybody at home who's watching. Thank you who are watching here. And please remember how important it is to vote on May 16th.
Can we please get a round of applause for Ms. Craig and the League of Women Voters?
Thank you, that went really well, don't you think?
I think it went very well.